Hi everyone, I'm Any New Province, and this week we're going to find out if Empyrial armor is possibly pauper playable. We're all anxiously awaiting the release of Guilds of Ravnica. It's going to come along with a lot of commons that could possibly be pauper playable. In the meantime, I wanted to try out another one of my pet decks in a competitive league environment. This deck is called Ka Sweep, and it focuses on a really cool combo between the cards Empyrial Armor and Plow through Reito. I'm gonna go through those cards first. Empyrial Armor costs 1 white to enchant a creature and give that enchanted creature +1/+1 for each card in your hand. While white doesn't have access to things like Gush or Brainstorm, it does have a lot of interesting tools to put cards back in your hand. The best tool this deck has access to, though, is Plow through Reito. Plow through Reito costs 1 and a white for an instant arcane spell that has the ability called Sweep, which means when you cast Plow through Reito, you can return any number of planes you control to their owner's hand. Target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each plane's returned this way. Luckily, we don't return the planes to our hand until Plow through Reito has already resolved, so if our opponent is going to counter it or remove the creature it's targeting in response, it's not a huge blowout. Plow through Reito is going to give our creature as many +1/+1 buffs as we have lands and put those cards in our hand to continue buffing that creature if they have an Empyrial Armor on. This is such a cool combo, and it's turned on as early as turn 4 if you can stick an Empyrial Armor on a creature. It might turn that creature into the Abyss, or it might allow you to swing for lethal in 2 turns. I really want to find out if Empyrial Armor is good or not, so I've included 2 tutors to make sure that Empyrial Armor will always find its way into our hand. That tutor is Heliod's Pilgrim. It costs 2 and a white for a 1/2, and when it enters the battlefield, you can search your library for an aura card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. While we'll usually be searching up our Empyrial Armor with Heliod's Pilgrim, we might want to include some other silver bullets in our deck as tutor targets. That's why we've got things like Lifelink. Lifelink costs 1 white for an aura that gives enchanted creature lifelink. This is great in those hyper aggressive matchups because if we have a huge lifelinking creature, our opponent shouldn't be able to do lethal damage to us. The rest of our tutor targets are for protection from targeted removal and bounce. The first piece of protection that we can tutor up with Heliod's Pilgrim is Chomano's Blessing. It costs white for an aura with flash. When it enters the battlefield, you choose a color. The creature that Chomano's Blessing is enchanted with has protection from that color. This card does a ton of stuff. First of all, it can just act as a counter spell for your opponent's removal. They point it at your creature, you flash this in, and now your creature is also protected from any of their future removal. Also, if your opponent's on a monocolor deck, this might just make your huge Empyrial Armor creature unblockable. We've also got 1 copy of Hyena Umbra, which costs 1 white mana for an aura that gives the enchanted creature +1/+1 and first strike, which would be okay, but the best part about Hyena Umbra is that it has Totem Armor, which means if enchanted creature would be destroyed, instead remove all damage from it and destroy Hyena Umbra. Having just another type of protection that also pumps up our creature is great for this deck, but the first strike ability that Hyena Umbra provides is going to give us even more utility. We'll go over that soon. Empyrial Armor wants your hand to be full at all times. Plow through Reito helps with this a lot, but we never want our hand to be empty. That's why I've included a lot of 2-for-1 creatures. First, we have Thraben Inspector, who is always in competition for my favorite white spell. Thraben Inspector costs 1 white for a 1/2, and when it enters the battlefield, you investigate, which means you make a clue token that you can pay to and sacrifice to draw a card. We're also running Squadron Hawk, which is a great creature to throw an early Empyrial Armor on, and also it does more than replace itself. If you don't already have the other copies of Squadron Hawk in hand on the battlefield or in the graveyard, when you play Squadron Hawk, you can go search out the rest of them, fill your hand back up, and give it a huge Empyrial Armor. Squadron Hawk costs 1 and a white for a 1/1 flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, you can search your library for up to 3 other cards named Squadron Hawk. It's great. It's pretty much a 4-for-1. Finally, we have possibly the best white spell that replaces itself upon entering the battlefield. This is Core Skyfisher. It costs 1 and a white for a 2/3 flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, you return a permanent you control to its owner's hand. We're really hoping to return Thraben Inspector with Core Skyfisher's ability so that we can make more clues and draw more cards, but we're okay bouncing a land and replaying it to get another mana to play another 1-drop, or bouncing some of the other spells in our deck that we're going to get to soon. Next up is our interaction package, although I wouldn't really call it a package. It's just 3 copies of Journey to Nowhere. Journey to Nowhere costs 1 and a white for an enchantment, and when it enters the battlefield, you exile target creature. When Journey to Nowhere leaves the battlefield, you return the exiled creature to the battlefield under its owner's control. Journey to Nowhere is a really great catch-all removal spell. If our opponent lands something like Well-Wisher, we're really going to have to take care of it right away. I'm glad to have journeys for that. Also, there's a little bit of added synergy with Core Skyfisher picking them up, letting your opponent have that card back that you don't really care about anymore, just so you can remove something that matters. Next is our 1-drop creature package. This deck is trying to be aggressive, so having a 1-drop to put an Empyrial armor on can end the game before our opponent has a chance to react. Our first 1-drop is the Best Abyss. This is Deathblade Elite. It costs 1 white mana for a 1/1 with Provoke, which means whenever Deathblade Elite attacks, you may have target creature defending player controls untap and block if able. That's sweet. You can give Deathblade Elite first strike with your Hyena Umbras or your Cartouche of Solidarities, start killing your opponent's creatures, and if you're not going to want to trade your Deathblade Elite, you can use its ability to pay 1 and a white, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to Deathblade Elite, and prevent all damage that Deathblade Elite would deal this turn. I mentioned Cartouche of Solidarity. This is another great 1-drop creature that can give first strike to Deathblade Elite, making it even better. It also acts as a great bounce target for Core Skyfisher. Cartouche of Solidarity costs 1 white mana for an enchantment that gives enchanted creature +1/+1 and first strike, but when it enters the battlefield, it also creates a 1/1 white warrior creature token with vigilance. Another one of our 1-drop creatures is Ication Javelineers. It costs 1 mana for a 1/1 and enters the battlefield with a javelin counter on it. You can tap your Ication Javelineers to remove a javelin counter from it and deal 1 damage to any target. Ication Javelineers is just a fine turn 1 play. It's a 1/1 that attacks just like our other creatures. The javelin counters and being able to reset them with Core Skyfisher is just a little bit of added juice for killing your opponent's elves or fairies. Our last non-land card is Sacred Cat. It costs 1 white for a 1/1 with lifelink. It also has the Embalm ability, so you can pay 1 white, exile Sacred Cat from your graveyard, and create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a white zombie cat with no mana cost, Embalm only as a sorcery. I'm always glad to have a little bit of added life gain in my decks, just in case you run into hyper-aggressive or burn matchups, but Sacred Cat's Embalm ability is awesome too. If your opponent counters it, you can embalm it, still have a creature on the battlefield, and maybe not have to spend the creature cards in your hand that would make your Empyrial armor stronger. Alright, let's have a look at this mana base. We've just got 18 basic planes, tons of untapped white sources so that we can hit all of our stuff on curve. We also have 2 Secluded Steppes though, because I want to run 20 lands to hit our 3 drops on time, but maybe we'll flood out a little bit. So Secluded Steppe is some insurance, because you can pay 1 white mana and discard it when it's in your hand to draw a new card off the top of your deck. Alright, let's have a look at this sideboard. First, we have 1 copy of Fragmentize to deal with our opponent's artifacts and Journey to Nowheres. We have a copy of Lifelink for giving our creatures lifelink when we're playing against something like Burn. We have a copy of Obsidian Acolyte for dealing with those black decks who have so much good removal for our ordered up creatures. We have 2 copies of Gutshot for killing fairies and tireless tribes. We have 2 copies of Relic of Progenitus for exiling our opponent's graveyards. We have 2 copies of Prismatic Strands for those combo and burn matchups. We have 1 copy of Core Sanctifiers for also blowing up our opponent's artifacts and Journey to Nowheres. We have 3 copies of Standard Bearer for picking up all of our opponent's enchantments and pump spells, and we have 2 copies of Celestial Flare if our opponent is only attacking with 1 or 2 creatures we have to deal with. And there you have it, Caw Sweep. We're going to take this deck into a league at twitch.tv/AnyNewProvince this Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Atlantic time. We're there every Tuesday night playing Possibly Pauper Playable decks. Before I go, I just want to remind you that you can like the video or subscribe to the channel down below. I'd seriously appreciate it. It's a great way to let me know you've enjoyed everything, and it really encourages me to keep making great Pauper content. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this deck tech, and hopefully I'll see you on Tuesday night.